Hello there everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Joesephyr and today's video on Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia is one that I know has been very heavily requested from me for the last month, 2 months, even 3 or 4 months, and it's Future Pulse Mark III, which is going to kind of give you guys an overview of everything that we have to expect from now until the point that JP is currently at. I wanted to kind of leave it to the last minute so that it was up to where we left off on the Future Pulse 2 video, which is my most viewed video ever, by the way, so thank you all very much for that. And it's going to kind of go on from where we are now, which is approaching Warrior of Light, Eldian Burst, and that kind of point in time, and the start of Lufenia, all the way up to where JP is now, having just had Tifa LD. So if that's all stuff that you guys are all interested in, then stay tuned and keep on watching. Of course, don't forget everyone to check in the description box below for all of my social media outlets, including Twitter, Twitch, Discord, Patreon, all that good stuff. Twitch, I'm having to take a little bit of a step back this weekend, unfortunately, because I have to work the entire weekend because I'm not able to work next week because I'm actually going to hospital for a gastroscopy and I have to self-isolate between those times. So if I'm a little slow on the uptake over the next couple of weeks, then do forgive me. I actually really want to start my Final Fantasy count up this week, but unfortunately it's going to have to wait until next week. With Patreon, as with every video that I release, I shout out one of my patrons at random so that I can give thanks to each and every one of you. And honestly, you guys help me so much with this channel and things like that. It really does keep me going, so thank you all so much for it, and I cannot thank you enough. And today that person is going to be Tidal Wade, who is a newer addition to my Patreon, and honestly thank you so much for all of your support. It means the absolute world to me, especially we're going through difficult times like having to not be able to work in through COVID and all of this stuff. It actually does mean a great deal to me. Don't forget to check out all of the various websites there are associated with Opera Omnia, as you can see all around me and in the description box below. And of course, don't forget to check out all the other fantastic content creators that are out there for Dissidia Final Fantasy, as well as myself. Just before we get started on looking through all of the different banners themselves, I wanted to give a quick disclaimer as to where I am in the game right now and what I've done in order to get to this point where I've done my research as to what I'm going to say when it comes to each of the banners themselves. So looking at my phone right now, I currently have 523,000 gems and exactly 800 tickets. And I've just had my 10th pity, which was VV, and honestly I was going to release this Future Pulse video before the beginning of this week, but I thought, you know what, I'll wait until after the community stream, and I'm glad that I did, because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to factor VV into any of this. And having been just pitied, as you guys saw in my last video, it's not the best place to start. But that being said, I've spoken to literally hundreds of people about their plans for like the Lufenia era, and quite honestly it's taken me a long time to get to even this point when it comes to making this video, because it's nowhere near as easy to recommend a banner, or more specifically not recommend a banner, than it was 6, 8, 9 months ago, even a year ago. It's just not that cut and dry anymore. So what I'm going to be doing is going through what my pulling plans are over the next sort of 8 to 9 months and showing you guys what my plans are. But rest assured, there are very few banners that I would say are entirely skippable over the course of the next era, which will be Lufenia difficulty, because everyone's just so damn good, and it's really difficult to split hairs because we can't realistically pull on everything, and that's why I wanted to make this video in the first place. So while it might look like I sit there and I go, yes, this banner's worth pulling on, this banner's worth pulling on, this banner's worth pulling on, it is very difficult to find ones that you're going to skip. And the first thing that I will say when it comes to this particular era for any Lufenia is, if you are going to skip a banner and you're planning on clearing all content that's going to be available at that time, plan ahead and have a look at who you want to use for any particular Lufenia or even Chaos Challenge, anything like that, so that you can sort of pre-plan which ones you can skip safely and which ones you actually need to go for. But enough of that, let's actually just get started and look through some of these banners. So here we are looking at ultima.com, which is where I get a lot of my information regarding banners, anything like that. They do also have a tier list if you want to look at that as well. And I do leave the link for this website in the description box below, so if you want to check that out. But I mean, I don't necessarily agree with a lot of the tier lists they put up on here, and neither do a lot of other content creators, so take that with a pinch of salt. But as you can see, just looking here, we're starting right between these two banners, which are Warrior of Light and Strago. And trust me when I say the amount of notes I've taken on these banners as to what's coming up and everything is pretty crazy. So believe me when I say I've done my research. Now, November is going to be all, like we've just seen what we're getting in Global for November, and you can see the 3rd anniversary gacha that we've got here is what we currently have, and we got it actually a little bit earlier. We got it for October, so it's all different characters, all the protagonists and things like that, so we're getting all these free pulls and power stones, which is great. But looking at the banners themselves, now I managed to pick up Strago, and obviously I've now pitied Vivi, and Vivi does factor in with some of these particular, like some of the Lufenias that are coming. Now, I'm obviously going to go into greater detail for each of these banners as they arrive with should you pulls, would you pulls, things like that. And therefore, Warrior of Light, which is going to come along with the last of the EX pluses, which are going to be Thancred and Laguna, I will be bringing a video to you quite shortly for that. Now, I am a huge fan of Warrior of Light. He is one of my favourite characters, and his LD is absolutely fantastic. Like, it wards off HP damage by the amount, or like you take less HP damage depending on how much shield you have, which is something that Warrior of Light has always done, and his LD is absolutely fantastic, and he obviously gets a burst here as well. The other thing I will say as well before we go like full long into this is I'm going to try to factor in burst tokens for myself once again, because I do purchase premium MOG passes where other people may not, so obviously you need to kind of take that into account with some of the plans that I have for myself. And as I said earlier, your plans may be completely different from mine, and that's actually okay. There are very few bad banners from this point onwards, so plan accordingly. Going back to Warrior of Light, I think that my typical plan in a month, or at least like a 2-week block with a character and their burst, is if I can, I will always try to get the LD for the characters that have their bursts, so that if for whatever reason I pull a burst on a different banner, then it creates a full kit. So, for example, with Kefka, I mean, I really like Kefka anyway, but I went on his banner for his LD, and then I didn't get his burst until all the way until Vivi, and it was during the pity for Vivi that I pulled a Kefka burst. So the same thing will apply here. Now, with Warrior of Light, I already have his EX, so with Warrior of Light, I will probably go in, try and pick up his LD with tickets. So tickets is probably where, I have 800 of them, and we're going to pick up more over the course of time. And hopefully Warrior of Light will be nicer to me than Vivi was. And if I pick up Laguna and Thancred along the way, then great, but I'm not going to go out of my way for them because I still need to use ingots for Warrior of Light. There are a lot of factors that you've got to bear in mind. You've got to bear in mind your books, your ingots, your ticket, your actual pulling resources, and various banners that are coming up after it. I'm not that fussed by Laguna and Thancred. They're not bad, like they're latecomers to getting an EX+, so therefore they're going to be classed as these EX-only heroes, and they're going to be useful, but by and large, apart from some of the characters that I've said with the video I made fairly recently about EX characters you may already have that will help you with early Lufenia, largely your party is going to comprise of characters that have EXs and LDs from this point onwards. Now, with Warrior of Light, like I said, I'm going to go in with tickets. Now, one that I think is going to be quite an unpopular pick is that I don't plan on pulling for 8. Part of the reason for this is because I don't have his EX. I don't have the rest of his kit. I tried to get his EX when his EX came out and I didn't get it. Instead, I got like 4 or 5 King dupes. But I'm not planning on getting 8 because I already know who I plan on using on any particular mission where he would be useful. 8's thing is that he counterattacks, he's like evade and counter, and it's really strong. Like it makes, like it's kind of like an evolution of Keita without the ice enchantment. But an 8 is really powerful. But because I want Kurosame really badly, who's coming straight after him, I have to find some banners that I'm not gonna pull on. Now for 8's Lufenia, I plan on using Warrior of Light, Keita and Noct, because Keita will help me to sort of use the Lufenia orb, and like, you know, because the trigger for it is counter-attacking and Keita can cover that. And honestly, the first couple of Lufenias aren't nearly as scary as the later ones. Like, you're not going to just get instantly wiped by a lot of them. So with that in mind, I'm going to try to avoid pulling for 8. If I get his LD in a free pull, because we know that he's like the last free pull that we're getting for a little while, then I will happily pick up his EX with tokens that I've accumulated through Mod Pass or anything, finish his kit, and then that's an extra character that I have that I can use in plenty of different missions. Fantastic. But if I can help it, I'm not going to pull on 8 because I would much rather pull for Kurosame. Now, Kurosame is... I'm tempted to spend gems on Kurosame, although the fact that I've just pitied Vivi makes me kind of hesitant. So I'm like, the fact that I have quite so many tickets, I'm actually quite tempted to try and pull his LD with tickets instead and do the same thing where I've got these EX tokens. Obviously I have to be careful because I only have so many and I only have 10 that I have to pick an EX to go for. So what I will probably do is like try and get his LD with tickets because Warrior of Light's burst isn't that mandatory. It's useful. It gives you a massive brave regen effect based on the amount of shield you have and extra brave overflow. So while Warrior of Light's LD is a fantastic thing to be picking up and his burst is great to have if you want to use him as a support-based character but still bring a burst, and therefore bring somebody like Vivi who's massive damage and doesn't have one, then you could consider doing that. And then obviously we have, for the latter half of this month, we have Kuja. Now a lot of people are like, oh, Kuja's coming out, Joe's going to go all in on gems, he's going to pity burst. I'm actually not. I'm going to try and ticket his LD, first of all. Now I'm trying to be sensible here because I currently have 55 burst tokens, something like that, because of premium mod passes. I've finished every chaos challenge so far. I could pick up a burst with burst tokens if I wanted to. Now I'm going to try to pick up his LD on tickets because neither of his banners are particularly appealing to me, because you've got one here that has his EX, Garnet and Lulu, and then you've got one here that has Rydia, Porum and Papalimo. Now if you don't have Garnet, then this is actually a pretty solid pick for you, because Garnet is one of those EX characters that is useful for quite some time to come, so you could try and pick up Garnet along the way. I already have everything but Kuja, LD and Burst, so therefore it doesn't really matter which banner I pull on here, because none of it's particularly useful to me. But if I can get Kuja LD here with tickets, especially considering that he comes along with Bahamut, and I will be trying to point out the kind of times in which we get like a massive influx of resources, and Bahamut being a summon board is going to be one of those times. We get like 400 plus tickets, like a buttload of 40,000 odd gems, and we've got the resources to be able to try and pull for these things. Gao is another one that I'm probably going to try and skip. Now, the reason for this is because this month is actually hella nasty in trying to pull for stuff, because we've just had Vivi, you've now got Warrior of Light LD, you've then got Kurosame, who is used in a lot of Lufenia clears because of his Ice Prison, because of the fact that he makes it so that you do a lot more HP damage. Kuja, who is like a single target monstrosity, his LD is by far the most single target damage dealing attack in the game for quite some time. Like, people have been saying in various videos that I've released recently, it's like, oh, why pull for Kuja because Tifa LD's come out? It's like, Tifa's 9 months away. If Kuja lasts that long, he's doing a good job. You know, you've got to try and think about the longevity of things. And Tifa's only just come out. We'll get to that as we get towards the end of the video. But Tifa's only just come out. We don't know what's going to come after. That might even just blow her out of the water, at least with Kuja, because he provides so much support capabilities. He's a Holy Enchant Imperiler. He's got like Brave Overflow buffs. He's got like ridiculous single target damage in his LD. He does a lot of damage, and he kind of stacks Holy Enchant with his burst as well, and it actually makes it so your whole party does a lot more damage. But his LD, again, is going to be what most people go for here. He's not the be-all and end-all that certain characters like Noctis and Lightning, who's going to be coming right after him, might be. So don't let my bias convince you that you have to have Kuja, because while he's extremely powerful, there are reasons that you may not necessarily need him. Gladio, on the other hand, is very hard to skip. Like, Gladio, I'm going in with gems on. He's one of the characters that I'm going to highlight, the characters that I am 100% going in with gems, and Gladiolus is one of them. Not only could I pick up Kuja Burst along the way here, but Gladio is like a tank supreme. Like, he's a evade counterer, a cover tank. He does crazy amounts of damage. He's just extremely powerful, and therefore what I'm actually thinking of doing is skipping Gao and then waiting until Gladio comes out and then going back and doing Gao's Lost Chapter Lufenia if I haven't finished it already by using Kuja, Noctis and Gladiolus, because Kuja with the Imperial Enchant is going to help out. Yes, there's no earth damage there, but because Gladio's there, it does help you soak up a lot of the damage that you wouldn't have to worry about. Gladio is an absolute must pull as far as I'm concerned. Like, there will be people that don't pull him, and it's not like you're going to be absolutely stranded for content if you don't pull him. But he's so powerful, it's going to be very, very hard to resist him. I also don't have Sabin's EX, which would be kind of nice if I managed to pick that up. The same with Kurosame, actually. Like, I do Cypher's on his banner, and if I had managed to get Cypher along the way while getting Kurosame and Warrior of Light's Burst, then great. Now, we move on to December here, and then Lightning. Lightning is a character much like Noctis, where you absolutely will want to have Lightning LD and Burst. Her damage is unparalleled for a very long time. She gets so many free turns, so many chances to deal damage. She does a large amount of damage. I mean, I hate the look of her weapons. I think the Razor Carbine and Ultima Weapon on her look hideous, so I will still be sticking with her EX skin and her current alternate costume. But she's also the dawn of the level 80 era and calls. Now, at this point, not quite yet, but there's another thing that you're going to need to start bearing in mind when it comes to your pulls, and that's a character's call ability. Now, what a call ability is, if you haven't seen it through various JP content or anything like that, is you call in a character to do a single move and then they leave, and it's usually their skill 2. However, as we get a bit later on, I believe it's February, we will see LD call abilities, where a character comes in, uses their LD, and then leaves. And then that changes things quite dramatically. So while you don't have to worry too much about it right this second, like pulling for characters for their call, it is going to be something that goes down the line. But again, I'm actually only going to be using tickets on this banner, because the stuff that comes on her banner, so Penelo, Raijin, and Zac, and then Raijin and Penelo getting level 80 is a big deal as well. I will be trying to kind of gauge the best place for me to try to pull Lightning's Burst. Because I want Kuja and Lightning, and I know that's possibly pushing my luck a little bit because they're back to back, because I'm using gems on Gladio, I can hope to God that I get a Kuja's Burst either on his own banner while pulling for his LD, or during Gladio's banner. If that doesn't happen, then I'm happy to wait until after Lightning's banner comes out, because in theory, I will already have the LD for Kuja by then, and then try and get her LD. Now, if I get her LD and don't get her burst, then I will go back and I will pity Kuja's burst on Gladio's banner, depending obviously on how many gems I've had to spend, and then use my burst tokens on Lightning, because I don't particularly plan on pulling on the rest of her banners if I don't have to. There's another character here that's actually really, really hard to skip, but like not as much as others, and it's gonna I'm waiting to see how much contention there is in the comment section, because there's gonna be a lot of it. So in short, when it comes to Kuja and Lightning, it'll be tickets for Kuja LD, gems on Gladio banner, hope to get Kuja burst along the way to getting Gladio's LD. If that doesn't happen, it'll be tickets for Lightning's LD, and then I will see how it goes with regards to pulling Lightning Burst as to whether I use my burst tokens on either Kuja or Lightning, and then I pity the other one, because I will have them both. If you have to pity one of them, you don't have to go for Kuja as much as you do for Lightning. She is far, far more prevalent. I really want Camlanor, but I know that he's a character that a lot of people are going to skip. And it's like, this is one of those banners where it's like, well, if I have tickets by this point and I've managed to go through this gauntlet of all 5 or 6 banners on the trot that I'm going to be pulling on, then I might throw a few tickets at this. Because I actually really like Camlanor's kit, but he's not as crazy as some of the other characters would be. But it depends on whether I have the tickets for it. Otherwise, I will skip it. There are actually loads of different characters you can use to clear this. So for the Lufenia, so it's not really as much of a hassle. So basically, skipping a banner comes down to, can I do the Lufenia with the roster that I already have? If yes, then I really, really don't need to worry about it. Do I need this character for future Lufenia missions? If no, then don't worry too much about it. Trust me, DE becomes the least of your problems at this point. It's all about that Lufenia. Then we get 2 more banners come up. Yeah, this is for December. both of which have very, very well known, in fact it's like 3 on the trot, that are very well known for how difficult their Lufenia missions are. And I do think that with at least one of them, Vivi will come in handy here. Reno's is not one of them. Reno's is a pain in the butt because it's not because of their like the Lufenia orb or anything. It's just the enemies themselves are an absolute pig. And I plan on using Lightning, Gladiolus, and Raijin to tackle this, because Raijin will have his level 80 by then, and he'll also just have that consistent paralysis. He'll just be a lot more well-rounded. And then Gladio will still be able to do his tanky thing. Lightning is my designated damage dealer. She still has the thunder damage that Reno would have brought along. I will probably skip Reno if I can. If I have to pull on this, then I'll use tickets to try and get Reno. But if I can't, then I'm gonna, but I would rather not. Reno is a great character. He has his pyramid debuff that makes it so that they can't deal damage to you during the time where the pyramid is on. And there's a lot of reasons to pull for Reno. But given the months that are coming up, trust me when I say that December is actually probably one of the best times to be saving resources while you can, because it's going to be really difficult from this point onwards. Next on the line is going to be Sephiroth. Sephiroth's Lufenia is arguably one of the hardest there is. Now, you're going to need a damage dealer for this, and a heavy one. You're going to want Gladio for this, because Gladio you can take to practically anything. And there are very, very few clears I have seen on this particular mission that don't use either Lightning with her burst or Sephiroth with her burst. You don't have to have a burst for this, because I actually think that Vivi is going to do well here as well, because his damage for AoE is just that massive. It's going to help him out a lot. But a lot of people consider Sephiroth's burst to be one of the weakest in the game. I kind of like it. I don't hate it. And Sephiroth is a really popular character, so I think a lot of people are going to pull here anyway. I will try and skip this, and I would like to try and bring Lightning, Gladio, and Kurosame to this event, because Kurosame means my damage output is that much higher. But, so therefore I don't feel the need to pull for Sephiroth's LD here. Bear in mind it's December, so around Christmas we might get some free pulls here and there, or there might be some really nice gift or something like that in terms of like getting us gems. We also have the Black Friday sales coming up around late November, so that's going to be around Gladio's time, so there's going to be little bits and pieces there for those who are happy to spend money. But from this point onwards, so you know, I've said like tickets for LD on Lightning, and then skip Camlonaut, skip Reno, skip Sephiroth, and then I will also want to skip Kieran, who is the one after him. Again, I don't want to skip Kieran because I actually really like Kieran and I really want him, but there are going to be, there's too many banners after him that you just need to save for. So if you can skip these, then you could do so. But again, if you find you are struggling with content, that is when you should be pulling anyway. Because if you're struggling, then clearly there's something missing. If you need a high damage dealer, you've got Kuja for magic, you've got Vivi for magic now, you've got Lightning for physical damage as well coming soon, and then you've got Noctis, who's been around for a little while. Another one of my pities. So hopefully this doesn't become a trend. Now, Kieran is another one who has a really nasty lost chapter in terms of the Lufenia, and the reason that it's brought along here, or Sephiroth is useful here, is because he has the ability to set bravery to 1 with his burst. He's able to kind of make it so that he can delay things without actually delaying them, because they reset their bravery to 1 every turn. But Sephiroth's problem is that his kit just hasn't changed. He has the speed down aura, he's still like relatively slow comparatively. His hit count's actually not that great anymore. Like it was fine for a while, but it's not that great anymore. And his LD kind of isn't much stronger than what he already has. However, well, we'll get to Rude in a moment. You will want to bring somebody that has some kind of gravity or instant break mechanic to this particular fight for Kieran's Lost Chapter, which is why I'm planning on taking this on with Strago, Lightning and Gladio. Lightning and Gladio will carry you through a lot of stuff. I will just say that now. If you get them together, Lightning and Gladio will carry you for a good portion of time. Now, Rude is an interesting one, because if I manage to have EX tokens still by this point, this is going to be tickets for me, because I don't care about Sephiroth's burst. If I got it, I would consider going back and pulling on his LD, but I'm not going to go out of my way for Sephiroth. I've made that mistake once before with his EX Plus, twice before even, with his EX the first time it came around. I spent 50k on his EX the first time around. I then spent my ingots on him the second time around, and he has underperformed both times. And from very, very, very many other people's reports, he underperforms again with his LD and his burst comparatively to your Kujas, your Lightnings, your Noctises, your Ardens, etc. Now, Arden does start to decline a lot quicker than the other three that I've just mentioned. Rude is fantastic. Rude is another one that I would say is up there with your Gladios and your Kurisames in that you want this character. Like, his healing and support capabilities are through the roof, and he converts healing by like multiplying it 500% and turning it into bravery. So honestly, Rude is Rude blows Reno out of the water, which is kind of savage, but like in terms of them being the Turks and things like that. But a lot of people are probably going to want to pull for both of them. But if you pick one, make it Rude, because he really is just fantastic. Okay, so now we're coming to the new year. So we're finished with this year. We've got some very, very nice banners. And according to my notes, there's only one banner this month that I actually think I'm able to skip. And it's going to be a pain. Possibly two, now that Vivi's happened. Now, Cloud is very hard to resist, to be honest. Like, Cloud is a damage machine with his LD and his burst. Like, his burst is one that just augments damage across the board. Everyone's damage goes up, their bravery damage goes up, their critical damage goes up, but his LD is fantastic and his rework is fantastic. His brave HP, like from cross slash, turns into 3 brave HPs instead, so it's like actually more multiplicative than it was originally. He still has the gimmicks with finishing touch and cross slash, so that you can get cross slash plus and the guaranteed paralysis. Finishing touch hits way harder, does splash damage, and obviously with guaranteed launches. With his LD and his burst in the right circumstances, there are videos out there of Cloud dealing upwards of 5 million damage during his burst, which is stupid. Straight up stupid. And therefore I will, again, I prefer to pull for tickets, or pull tickets on an LD banner. Though saying that, Celes is on this banner down here, just this one here, alongside Waka and Yuri. And I would really like to pick up Celes' EX, because Celes' LD later down the line is also really good. So if you have Celes already, then hold on to that, because it will come in handy later. But honestly, here I am looking for his LD. Beatrix is a favourite of mine. We all know that Beatrix is a favourite of mine, and therefore if I was going to spend gems on a banner to try and get Cloud's Burst, it would probably be this one. Beatrix's LD gives her access to follow-ups that have Dispel on them. So Dispel on Beatrix's LD, and she just dispels on literally everything that she does. But she does it all at once, like she has this mass dispel on everything, which is actually weird for her own Lufenia, because you know you can, because the Lufenia Orb's criteria is to dispel. You don't actually want to dispel everything all at once. So honestly, for a lot of people, I think Beatrix is actually quite skippable as long as you've got a decent, as long as you have a decent dispel unit. Luckily, Cloud is a decent dispel unit, because if you have his World of Illusions weapon, then everything he does dispels at least one buff. And because he's got HP attacks in multiples on all of his stuff, that actually adds up. Because if you've used Meteor Rain with the double HPs and noticed that it dispels 2 buffs, that counts for his other stuff too. So like, bear that in mind when pulling for Beatrix. I would pull for her because she's a favourite of mine, but you don't necessarily need her. She's not like 100% fact have to have. Xander is also a very interesting character, and Xander is more skippable now than he was because Vivi exists. His Lufenia is dark damage, so there are loads of characters you could bring along to this, Realm being one of them, Vivi being one of them, Leon being one of them. There's plenty of characters that you could use to subsidize Xander, but Xander's really good. Like, he imperils Earth, Fire, and Dark. He does this crazy amount of damage. He's an enchanter for Dark as well, so that damage is going to add up really quickly. And if you still don't have Cloud by this point, then what a great time to catch him. There's characters, I mean, you know, who doesn't want a Zell EX while pulling for Xander? And Aiko again. I think that, like, honestly, from this point onwards, any EXs you get for other characters, they're pretty much purely just going to be for Chaos challenges, and not for much else. There are missions like Lufenia's you can take characters with just their EX on, but they are few and far between, and therefore you do have to, you know, play the game by this point, and you have to actually, like, pull on some of these banners. But Cloud, like, with the Fusion Sword burst and everything that he gets with that, I didn't even say with his LD, that his LD now has delay and a free skill use on his following turn. His longevity is better, his burst is insanely good, the amount of damage he can do, because bear in mind that during his burst you can LD and then finishing touch twice, and you're getting ridiculous amounts of bravery damage and HP damage through launches. It all adds up. So now for the second half of January, moving on from here, these three banners here, so a Miditelian reprint, Edward reprint, and Kurosame reprint, all came about when COVID first kicked off and where we went into like a full lockdown. So this was kind of just like a delayed thing. So my assumption is that we in Global aren't going to get these banners. If we do, then fantastic, but I'm going to assume that we're not, and therefore I'm going to gloss over them for the purposes of this video. Then we're going to be moving into Firian's kind of block. Now, Firian gets a pretty hefty boost from his rework, his LD, his burst, all that good stuff, just like Cloud. And he also gets a really killer alternate costume that I'm absolutely going to want if I get his kit. And then, like, the rework he gets, he can heal the whole party. He's all about HP regen, draining health, and that kind of thing. And he's much more party orientated than he was before. His LD sets up a trap, like a blood thorn, I think it's called, trap, where, like, for 3 turns they take a brave HP damage after their turn that actually heals your party. And his burst also makes it so that you're, like, all of your you get brave regen across the party, and he also makes it so that you refund bravery with your HP attacks. So that's going to be really novel and fun to use. He's not nearly as, like, mandatory as, say, Cloud or Lightning or Noctis, but he's very, very good. And I would be lying if I said I wasn't going to want him. I'm going to, again, like I have done with many of the banners here, I'm going to probably pull on tickets for his LD and then see how the bursts go, because there is a banner here that I probably will use gems on. It isn't going to be X-Death though. Like, X-Death continues to be a really novel character. Like, he has the HP poison, which is actually compounded by his LD. He has these amazing gravity attacks, but he still isn't, he's not a Brave Shaver, other than, like, he's not able to break things really, other than just using regular attacks. And he's novel, like, he's really novel, but I just don't think that he's, like, up there with some of the other characters. And honestly, I take any banner that I can skip as a positive thing. And for his Lufenia, I probably plan on taking, or in my notes here, I've sort of said that I'm going to take some combination of Lightning, Firian, Leon, or Edward, depending on what I have by then. Like, I will have Lightning by this point. It's facts. And if I manage to get Firian, then I'll use Firian. If I have Firian and Lightning, if I have Firian, LD, and Lightning, I'll take those two, and then probably Edward as a support character. But I will play it by ear, and you do have to take these future pulls with a grain of salt, because what you get, you may not always get what you want. Like, you can't pull on everything until you get what you want, because you will run out of resources so fast. I have already spiraled way past my limits when it came to, like, resources, and honestly there are many banners, including Arden's, that I regret pulling on because it just isn't going to help me in the future. And so you just have to be really careful. So trust me, when I say a banner is skippable, it's not. It's not like the character's bad, don't pull on them. It's, oh my god, there's a banner that I can actually save stuff on here. So just, like, try not to see it as a disparaging comment towards your favorite character, because it certainly isn't intended as that. However, like, one of my favorite characters here is Dark Knight Cecil. Dark Knight Cecil's LD is going to come along with the Boss Rush mode. Now, Boss Rush mode is exactly what it says on the tin, but you take multiple teams with you in order to sort of beat them. And Dark Knight Cecil's LD is actually phenomenal. Like, it really just elevates him. I've been using Dark Knight Cecil's EX Plus for ages, and I've only recently just replaced him with VV because VV does a similar thing. But, like, he gets so much longevity out of his LD, he gets so much draining HP, he gets so much damage out of it, that it really does help him a great deal. So honestly, I personally will pull on gems for Dark Knight Cecil and hope to get Firian's Burst along the way, and if I don't get Firian's Burst, then I won't be spending burst tokens on it. Dark Knight Cecil's LD actually grants Soul Eater, which is one of his attacks from NT, as most of them are. But the reason that it's so good is on top of all of the stuff that Dark Knight Cecil does, it also provides a debuff that makes it so that any HP damage that enemy takes is increased by 20%. So, and this stacks with Kurosame, with Charlotta, with stuff like that. Anything that increases the amount of HP damage you take, or the enemy takes, is gonna be worthwhile. And Dark Knight Cecil is no exception. And that's partly why I think that if I'm gonna pull for Firian's Burst, again, this all depends entirely on how my resources are looking by this point, then he's definitely a character that I would be looking into. So now moving past Dark Knight Cecil, these Burst Rush banners that you can see here, so there's ones with Squall and Noctis, there's ones with Kefka and Shantotto, there's ones with Varn and Arden. These were all, I believe, also added as like padding for sort of COVID quarantine, things like that. So there's every chance that we don't get these. However, even if we did, I probably wouldn't pull on them. The exception to that possibly being Squall and Noctis, because Squall is going to get a rework, but when he does, he comes back on a banner anyway that has Lightning and Cloud on it and is arguably better. But like, if you were really desperate for Noctis, then you could try and get it here. But the other two, I wouldn't bother, if I'm perfectly honest. We are way past the need for them at this point. So honestly, I would just leave these alone, even if we do get them. And the chances are we probably won't anyway. However, come February, which is these banners here, there's a character that we're really excited about, which is Ramza. There's another summon board coming, which is Divine Diablos, so this is like the next stage up from the ultimate summons, where when you summon, they actually do an HP attack during the summon, and luckily, the bit that we all care about, it's another way of gaining a butt ton of resources, because we're all going to need them at this point. Ramza is really good, like really, really good. Ramza's LD is a delay guaranteed launch that also provides him with another like special effect that increases initial bravery, brave overflow for the party, even better brave regen, and it lasts for 16 turns per cast. So he's a character that just takes his support to the next level. His LD actually grants him his shout and pep buffs as well, so it's something you start a fight with and your party's just instantly better. It's great. We also get LD boards and call abilities, or LD call abilities at this point as well. And the other thing I will mention here as well is that Ramza and Machina, as you can see here, up until this point, when a character's burst was released and their LD at the same time, both banners that feature that character will have their LD. From this point onwards, that is no longer the case. Normally, there is one banner that features their LD, or the character's burst and their LD, and then another that features their burst and a different character, usually a returning one, or usually a new one, sorry, but in this case it's a returning one, that will feature a different LD. So if you've pulled for Ultimecia LD already, Garland LD already, Emperor LD already, then it's going to make your life a little bit easier going forward because you're not having to chase those whilst also chasing another character's LD when they're burst, because it can get really messy. However, I'm really pleased that I already have Machina LD because his LD call ability is actually very strong. And with the LD boards, which are like an extension of the character boards, in a similar way to how EX got EX+, there's a fourth tree on the character board that is pertaining to the LD. But at the end of it, you get this massive buff to the LD. So as an example, with Machina, Machina does a follow-up attack after inflicting a debuff with his LD on every action he takes. That is a 4-hit Brave HP attack, which is nice and it refunds some bravery for him. After his LD boards, that changes into a 8-hit Brave HP attack with an HP dump in the middle of it. So it's a 3-hit Brave HP, then a 5-hit HP. It's a bit different. Like it adds up quite a lot. And honestly, like, there's a lot to like about Machina from that point, and his LD call actually makes it so that other characters can take advantage of Spiral's linchpin as well. So having him is something that I'm really happy about. Now, I actually made a mistake here with Ramza's burst the first time I looked at it. I literally looked at it, I'm like, well, that's alright, I suppose. And then I read it again, and it's actually ridiculous. So what Ramza's burst does, in addition to giving him an extra use of his LD, of course, is it grants you max bravery, attack, initial bravery, and break damage limit up on bravery attacks by 2% for every buff on your party. Now, I originally thought it was every buff on Ramza, and I was like, It's kind of neat. I don't really need it though. That's a 5% on the offensive stats and also like break damage limit, but so your bravery attacks can deal like nearly 14,000 instead of 10,000 is a lot. So it's a burst that I think a lot of people are gonna go for, and myself included. Again though, just like I have done with many other banners, I try to like ticket the LD on the banner it comes out. This one is more of an exception. I would be tempted to just gem this one because I'm not so fussed about Caius or Guy. I mean, I would like them, but I'm not as fussed about them as I am about Ramza. I may just gem this one and see how it goes, depending on how my resources go. Luckily, as I said, we've got Diablos here, so we're going to get a load of resources. This is a great like influx of resources. So if you can save from this point like for a little while, then fantastic, because we're going to need it. After Ramza comes Caius. Now, Caius is mostly used for his cool ability. Caius is like, he's solid, like he's the same as he was when his EX came out. He's solid, but he's nothing special. His LD, however, does have instant break on it, which means his LD cool has instant break on it. So to have that access to that is actually really nice. And because like you get the benefits of like when Caius comes in, deal the debuffs. That actually counts for cool abilities as well. So you get extra debuffs and you get that instant break. So originally my plan was to kind of go, oh, well, you know, maybe I'll pull gems on on this banner. Maybe I'll pull gems on Guy's banner that follows it straight afterwards because I want Ramza's burst. But quite honestly, if I followed my plan to this point and I've been getting premium log pass each month, I should be able to just pick up Ramza's burst outright from here. And if I do, then I will probably skip both Caius and Guy because there are other characters a bit later on that I'll probably pull for their cool abilities because you can only take one per character. But Guy is a massive defensive wall, like reduces your HP damage you take. He massively increases your defense. He's also the second Earth in Imperial Enchanter next to Gao. And most people will probably tell you that if you're not pulling for Gao, you should probably pull here. And I agree with that to a certain extent, but I may try and actually skip them both because I've been looking at clears for Guy's event and people have taken Lightning, Kurasame and Ramza for it. And honestly, that sounds like a pretty vicious team as it is. Like Lightning being the ridiculous damage dealer that she is, and then Kurasame making it so that they take more damage, and then Ramza making it so that your bravery hits are harder. It all adds up to an absolute sort of like mishmash of just damage, and that's all you really want. So if you're able to deal with it that way, I may well try and do so. Guy's really cool. And if I wanted to, or if I didn't want to spend my burst tokens, if I was going to spend gems, I'd probably do it on here. Because then having an Earth Imperial Enchanter would be nice. Because Imperial Enchant, if you've got one for like most elements, it's going to help you out a great deal. So like Holy, I'm going to have access to Kuja. Lightning, I'm going to have access to, well, Lightning. And Raijin as well. Fire, we've now got like access to Vivi. Dark, there's either Zidane, or there's Leon, or there's Dark Knight Cecil. There's various characters you can use, but having as many different elemental Imperial Enchanters as possible will help you down the line. Now, moving on to the rest of February, we now get to Ultimecia. Ultimecia's burst, people are really excited for because it makes the enemy skip turns in the same way that a Mid-Italian does. However, that's what the burst does. You only get to use that once. So, like, you do have to, like, it's not the same as a Mid-Italian. She's still really good. Like, she's still really good. But I am more hesitant to pull on Ultimecia because I couldn't get her LD the first time around. And this is the dilemma that happens when it comes to some of these banners. Because alongside Ultimecia comes Penelo LD. Now, Penelo LD, I'm going to have to pull for if I want to skip another banner later. Penelo's weird because Penelo is like the buffer version of Kefka, where she has all these ridiculous frame buffs and you can't really match her up with very many people. In the right team composition, she's massively powerful. And again, gets a kick-ass costume of this banner as well. But I'd rather pull for Penelo than Ultimecia because I think I'm going to be able to make use of her better, apart from for Chaos Challenges. But because I want the stuff that follows Ultimecia, I shouldn't have a problem with Chaos Challenges. And in terms of Lufenia, I will have magic damage dealers like Kuja, I will have and Vivi, and like perhaps some others as well, or Strago. So I'm not as fussed by Ultimecia. As much as I'd love to get her. Like, if we had free pulls and I got her LD, I'd probably go all in and want the burst as well. Or if I got the burst on one of the banners, I'd probably go back and pull for the LD as long as I had the time to do so. And I still maintain this from my last Future Pulls video as well. If we get to this point and you get a burst, like, early, then you can go back and pull on an LD, but be very, very mindful of when every banner ends. I've had so many messages from people saying, I got Kefka burst, but his banners have gone, so I can't get his LD. Is he still usable? And the answer is not really. Like, it's sad, but like, if you're not gonna take a character with a burst and not an LD instead of a character with an LD and not a burst. So just be very, very mindful of when each banner ends and just keep it that way. Now, like I said, I would really love to pull for Ultimecia because I do think she's really good. But honestly, at this point, I've probably said this about literally every single banner we've had. So you can see now why I struggled to make this video as much as I have. It's because everyone's really good. Like, everyone is really good. So it's more about knowing what you're taking to an event before you take them. And if you're not pulling on a banner, who are you bringing to an event? Jack is a character that I actually would like the LD for. Jack is there mostly for his LD call ability again, but that's because his LD is actually really powerful. It inflicts a debuff that makes it so they take more bravery damage. So you can combine that with various different things and make it so that you're like dealing way more damage. Like, Ultimecia is not very well known for her potencies, so having something like Jack's Frames debuff is going to make her a lot stronger. So if I got, I mean, who am I kidding? If I have resources, I'm probably going to pull for Ultimecia, but I'm trying my hardest to find ones to skip here. So there's a lot of characters to be liked here, but I at this point, it's going to be like tickets for Penelo, tickets for Jack, provided I still have them by this point, because there's so many banners that I'm going tickets and not gems. And then we're just going to have to see where we go from there. So we're still in February here with these last two banners for February, and honestly, for the research that I've done, as far as I can tell, February and March is probably the hardest time I'm going to have when it comes to resources. Other people may feel differently. Those of you that want both of the Turks or Sephiroth or FF7 crazy, then late December, early January is going to be a real pain for you. But here we have the end of Dimensions End, or like the end of what we know a Dimensions End to be. This is DE20. So Kryl and Hope come around here, and both of them are really good. Like, they're really good. Hope inflicts D-Shell with his, which is a magic resist down debuff. So on top of defense downs and elemental debuffs and stuff like that, this is yet another stacking debuff that makes you deal more damage, and therefore it's worthwhile. Kryl's LD makes it so that she comes in and it's like the party starts with her buffs from her Ray of Hope ability. She also inflicts a trap with her LD that paralyzes on like when it's done. She gets like, she's also really good. She also makes it so that her bravery can't sink under 10%. So that makes her EX way stronger, and her EX was always really good. She just needed to be a bit stronger, and her LD does that for her. So honestly, I'll be surprised if I don't get Ultimecia's burst at some point during this month, just because I want to pull on everything in this month, and it's going to be really, really difficult. Like, between her and Ramza, my poor resources are going to get absolutely ravaged. And then we come to March. March is probably the most difficult time I have had with my research on what I'm going to pull for and what I'm not. Onion Knight and Gao, like, as Gao gets his LD boards here, and bear in mind that I wasn't planning on pulling for Gao the first time, or Guy, although I might change my mind on Guy. Onion Knight's LD is like really unique and really interesting because it grants a free skill use to your party and not just himself. And that is so breakable and combo-tastic that I feel like I have to have it. But the latter half of March is going to be a really big one. And the Arc 3 Chapter 1 Lufenia is a really well-known one for being difficult as well, so it's another one that you're going to need to plan for. There's just so much that I want over the course of this month, it's not even funny, and we haven't even gotten to Cecil yet, which it's not far off. But the order in which I want to pull for things is going to be really difficult. Now, Arciella gets her LD here, which grants her free skill uses of her skill 2, but not her skill 1. She's still really good. She's still really good, and there's a great opportunity to pick up Onion Knight. But Theodore's Lufenia is so strict on what you can take to it, because like healing is an aspect to it. Theodore like hurts himself in order to make himself really powerful, and then makes himself stronger again. He's like, and he has these crazy auras. He is literally a hybrid of his parents, so Rosa and Paladin Cecil, and it's really good. And I really want Theodore. However, he is completely blindsided by his dad in literally the next banner after him. And yet, Theodore is still really imperative to his own Lufenia, and Arciella, you can skip Arciella if you want to, because there are other characters you can take to her Lufenia. So this one I am genuinely stumped on. Like Onion Knight's little block, I am genuinely, I have no idea how I'm going to pull for these. Because I'd like to have Onion Knight, but his burst actually isn't a mandatory one. It's the LD you really want. And up until this point, it's actually still, to this point now, it's still rare that you ever need a burst. Like, if you've got one, then you're going to bring it along with you. But you don't absolutely have to have one at all times. It does, however, just make your life a lot easier if you've got them. So I'm really genuinely stumped as to whether I'm going to pull for Arciella or Theodore, or both if I have to, or neither. It all depends entirely. This is like, we are, what, 5-6 months away from where we are now in Global. I have no idea what my resources are going to look like by this point, because there are so many banners that I want to pull on. I would like Theodore because I'd like to experiment with his health drain and regain and his mechanics and things like that. But Arciella's Arciella, and I really want her as well. She's not nearly as like, oh my god, she is the only character you use as she had been when her EX came out. But her LD is still really powerful, and so I really want it. So sound off in the comments below if you guys have done research into Theodore, Arciella, or if you've played a lot of JP at this point in time, because loads of the people that I spoke to said that they just ended up pulling on both of them. And I'm still very much of the mindset that if I can skip a banner, then I take that as a plus. Moving on after that, we have Cecil. Cecil is bonkers. Like, absolutely ridiculous. Like, he takes all of the support stuff that Kuja does and kicks him to the curb with it. Doesn't completely take out Kuja though, because ironically they actually work very well together. Now, Paladin Cecil's LD gives a special effect on top of making it so he gets like free skill uses. I've done a lot of research into Cecil because he's one of my favorite characters, but he gives like ridiculous amounts of defenses. He makes it so that the party's HP has HP overflow, and as long as his HP is 100% or higher, he makes it so that all of your party's bravery and HP damage is increased, and it lowers the amount of HP damage that you take as well. And the buff lasts for like 12 turns at a time. He gets 4 uses of it without a burst, and then his burst it like makes it so that it like does more of the same stuff. You heal off of everything. You get a brave regen that is your HP. You get your brave damage limit goes up. Your HP damage limit goes up. It's just obscene the amount of stuff that Paladin Cecil's LD and burst does. And honestly, it's just gonna be tickets for the LD, and Canonor gets his LD board here, and it really upsets me that Canonor gets his LD on 2 banners that I sit there and I'm like, but there's something else I want more, because I really, really want to pull for Canonor, because I think he's way more fun and better than people give him credit. But I just, like, Paladin Cecil's way too good to pass up. Like, you just can't leave him alone. He's that damn good. Additionally to this, Squall, Cloud, and Lightning will get a start dash banner. So, like, we've had this before with their EXs, but this time around it's going to contain their LDs and their bursts as well. Squall gets his LD boards. In fact, all 3 of them get their LD boards here, and none of them are ones to sniff at. They're all really powerful. Squall's, however, is on another plane. Like, Squall, if you don't have him already, you're probably going to want him, because he triggers his LD after every single attack, and it's ridiculous. I, however, fully plan to have all 3 of these bursts before this comes out, and I'm sure a lot of players will. So if you don't already have Squall, this is probably the time where you're probably going to want it. But if you're like me and you've planned, I mean, obviously none of us, we could plan ahead to knowing that Squall was going to get this just as he came out in Global, so a lot of people did pull for him just so that they had him for this point. So if you're like me, then pulling on Cloud and Lightning, like, you're not going to not pull on them because their damage is so powerful. So if you've got them all by this point, then honestly, I wouldn't worry. These summer campaign banners here, these I wouldn't worry too much about because they're all just EX weapons. There's no LDs, there's no bursts. We may not even get this because it's a campaign thing, and a lot of campaign banners that JP get, I learned this when I did my last Future Pulls video, we're not going to get most likely, but we could, and if we do, it's nice extras, but as far as I'm concerned, it's probably just Power Stones at this point. Alongside, this is another dilemma for me here, because I've tried to limit the banners that I pull on in a month to to the protagonist or the burst character, get their LD, and then one of the other characters. If I really, really want both of them, I'll try and get them both. But obviously, like I've said numerous times here, I am not skipping banners because I don't like a character. I'm really not. I'm skipping banners because I feel like I have to save resources somewhere down the line. And Kais and Gabranth, basically, I'm picking one of them to pull on gems to get Cecil. And I don't know which one to pick. Kais's LD makes it so that you get a debuff that increases Bravery's HP, or your party's bravery during launches, and it's nice. But Kais was already really powerful to begin with, so I don't think that he's kind of brought up to the standard as he is here. And the same can be said for Gabranth, where Kais is adds more of the debuffs, sort of makes it so that you get sap and stuff like that off of that. You get even more HP versions, HP attacks where you get party bravery batteries. He just does more of what he does best, which is launching. Whereas Gabranth rounds out his kit with his LD and his boards, where he gets a Protector of the Prince buff, which is more bravery attack for him and lowers your HP damage. So now he's lowering your HP damage from his LD, and then the bravery damage you take from his other buffs. So he's a lot more well-rounded. And also at this point, the next level of Dimensions End comes about, which is Dimensions End Transcendence, which is one that you have to take multiple parties to. And Gabranth gets used a lot in this. Now, I actually find that Gabranth's kit seems to fall off quite quickly, because after this point, you don't see Gabranth used that much. But he's used so frequently in Dimensions End Transcendence that I'm I've got to pick one of these to pull on gems to get Paladin Cecil, because I will have Paladin Cecil one way or another. It's just, if there's one that you are pulling on, it's him. The next, up until this point, the character's bursts that you're going to want are going to be Lightning, Cloud, Ramza, and then Paladin Cecil. I mean, that's 4, and that's a lot. That's a lot. If I pitied all 4 of them, my gems would be at 0 right now. So it's not cute. It's going to be difficult. I'm not going to lie. But I want to have Paladin Cecil at some point, one way or another, and I'm not sure whether to pull harder on Kais or Gabranth. So I'm probably going to wait and see what happens with me pulling for Paladin Cecil's LD, and that's true of all of the kind of blocks of banners that are coming up. So then that's going to be the way I go about that. So now we're going to be moving into April. So now we've moved past the really nasty block, for me at least anyway, of February, March. We're moving into April. Now this is going to be where Emperor's bursts of banners come up, and Emperor's going to come along with Divine Ramu. So this is another stop-off point where we're going to be getting a large number of resources because it's another summon board. Emperor will get his burst here, and Emperor's burst is really interesting because it triggers a trap like most of his kit does. But so you'll get obviously all of the stuff during his burst, but his burst attack actually triggers a trap that also hits really hard, does 100% AoE damage, delays, and does all of that stuff. But also you'll get the burst effect is kind of nothing special. It's just more uses of his LD. Emperor is really good, and he's one of my favorite characters, so I will end up pulling for him. But it's the stuff that comes with him that's really good. Sellers' LD is absolutely fantastic. So Sellers' LD triggers, basically, Sellers was really good always, in the sense that her niche in having the magic absorb was always really useful. But her LD takes her to another level by giving her Ice Imperil. It gives her more more lock, because obviously you want lock with something like that because she's a tank. She also makes it so her bravery absorb lasts for longer, and it actually is stronger as well. She also inflicts a debuff that's also a trap that makes it so that they take more bravery damage. Like any of these buffs or debuffs that increase by a percentage the amount of bravery or HP damage an enemy takes are usually really good. And then it also makes it so that it's an actual trap that heals the party, batteries the party, and she gets 4 uses out of it, which is really good. Like, Sellers actually finally comes into her own with Emperor. So I will probably ticket Sellers here. Like, I'm going to ticket Sellers because I already have Emperor LD. So I can ignore the banner, and this goes back to what I was saying about when it comes to Ultimecia, etc. I can ignore that banner and I can go straight in for the other character. My gems are going to be going on Aerith. Aerith appears here, and Aerith's banner is weird because it's there's a few banners like this one where there are special banners that have every character's EX available on them, so the rates are going to be a bit weird. So that's why I'm going to go into gems on this, because I know I want Aerith LD, because it's really powerful, like really powerful. It has a buff that gives you debuff evasion, and it actually debuffs the enemies by, like, I think it's all of their offensive stats. It's their attack and their speed at the very least, and their defense, actually. And it also gives a debuff that makes it so they take more damage and stops them from gaining buffs. Like, there's so many applications for that it's not even funny. Like, I think it's really, really powerful. And she just does so many different things. Like, whenever she attacks something as well, like, it reduces their bravery, increases, like, you party battery, decrease. It doesn't use up her bravery. It's like there's so many reasons to go for Aerith LD. It's crazy. And Emperor Burst is still on that banner. Now, the next ones that I'm looking at are going to be the Dawn of Aranea in JP and Eldnash's LD. Now, this is going to be a harder pick. Eldnash, I love using Eldnash. Eldnash's LD basically makes it so that he has much wider longevity. It's another outlet for him for damage. He gets sap, which is nice because it helps him with his warp buffs and stuff like that. It's really nice, and the fact that he's just about to get a burst as of the writing of this video means that that's going to save you having to pull for anything else when it comes to Eldnash. But Aranea and her LD is really, really good. Like, really good. Because what it does is it gives her a buff where literally everything she does unbreaks an enemy before she attacks them. And yeah, she's raw damage. Yeah, she's a delay. Like, she does nothing more than what she did before in our version, because her EX and all that was already really stupid. But her Magitech spear lasts for a really long time. Like, we're talking like 10, 12, possibly even longer than that. And you're just unbreaking the enemies on everything. And it means that her overclock lasts that much longer as well. Like, her HP attack plus and her brave attack plus also trigger overclock, which means that it doesn't stop. Like, bear in mind that you get overclock when you break something. The fact that you're unbreaking and then breaking everything straight after, you're going to maintain overclock. Like, the issue that we've had with her before, it just isn't there anymore. So she's definitely one to look at as well. And I think my plan here is to ticket either Eldnash or Aranea, probably Aranea, although I might not be able to resist Eldnash because I love using him, and having that future-proof element for his burst come about is going to be really handy later on down the line. But I think it'll get, like, for Emperor's block, it'll be tickets for Sellers, gems for Aerith, and then tickets for one or the other. If I don't want to pull on Eldnash, I've already decided that I could bring Lightning Emperor and Aerith to his Lufenia. So there are characters I can take if I don't pull for Eldnash. In fact, there's loads of different ones that you could do as well. I've seen Ramza, Jack, and Emperor used on Aranea's event. So if you don't necessarily want her, you can go in and try and finish it and not pull for her. But I do think she's really good. There's so few banners that you can realistically skip by this point. Like, honestly, how many banners have I said that you can outright skip at this point? It's not many, and it is scary, but this is the way the game's going, I'm afraid. So now another really popular character is going to be getting her burst and her LD at this point, and it's Y'shtola. Now Y'shtola is another one that goes back to like a weird point, like Ramza, where a returning character comes back with their LD boards and like their LD call and everything, but it's not a bad character to have that with because it's Kuja. Now Kuja's LD boards doesn't do all that much, it just makes Seraphic Star that much more stronger. It gives the ability that he has in the framed buff he has in Tetra Crystal, which is what gives the enchant in peril. It gives you Brave Overflow as well on everything like that. But the fact that he gets his like LD call is a thing. Like his LD is still at this point extremely powerful. So this goes back to like this point in time when it comes to global and Kuja's LD actually being worthwhile. Now, Y'shtola's one is a bit of a weird one. Now, Y'shtola, it kind of brings the whole Blood Lily thing into the game as well. It unbreaks everyone, and then it does a Brave HP attack, and then you get Blood Lily active, which gets stronger every time you heal or battery, and then you get a new version of her Bravery attack that turns into a Brave HP. And then you also get Afflatus Misery, which as an FF14 player and a White Mage main makes me very, very happy. And it becomes just a really powerful Brave HP attack that uses up the Blood Lily, and it's just really cool. So you also just get access to like actual offensive power when it comes to Y'shtola, which is really, really cool. Her burst is one that I think is okay, but like many support characters, you're often not gonna bring along a support-based burst if you've got a damage dealing one. Now her burst effect is attack raise, attack raise, stolen brave overflow limit, and HP damage dealt by 20%. So it is really good. But with Y'shtola's burst, her base kit doesn't really do damage. So unless you're just trying to like get Afflatus Misery off multiple times, it doesn't really do as much as others. Her LD is amazing, but I think that her burst is one that I'm not so fussed about at this point. So I'm going to ticket the LD. If I get the burst somewhere down the line on these banners, then great, because there is like, this is probably another like kind of breather session, which we haven't had for quite some time. Like, I'd be even tempted to skip Y'shtola if my resources were low. If they're not, then I will try and go for her. If not, then I will make do without her. Sarah is well known in the community for having a hilariously bad LD. And it's another one of these banners like Aerith's where it has like every EX on it and stuff like that, and it's just not one worthwhile. Like, it doesn't really do anything. She doesn't get a rework with her LD, which is disgusting, considering that her attacks are like single hit Brave HPs, which is unacceptable at this point. So trust me when I say that Sarah is a safe skip. Trey, however, most certainly is not. Trey is really good with his LD, and he is where my gems are going to go. I don't have his EX. I failed to get it the first time. I tried and I failed to get it, and I wouldn't pity it because it was just before like bursts and LDs were starting to come about. But it does another debuff, which is another trap after the enemies go off, that it just all compounds into more traps, and it also increases the bravery damage that they take as well. So much like Jack as an LD call, he's going to be really damn useful, like having traps available to him. Same can be said for a lot of characters here. Like there's so many good ones. And then you also have access to Waka is getting his, and he comes about with another boss rush. So the boss rushes come about with so it's Dark Knight Cecil for the first one, either Hope or Cryl. One of them's for DE20, the other one's for a boss rush, but they come at the same time, I think. And there's also, I did fail to mention that the DE20 has a campaign as well, where I think you can earn 60,000 gems, or something really ridiculous to do with that if you finish it all in time. Or like, it might not be that big a number, but I know it's a really big number of gems that you can acquire. Hopefully we get that transfer over to Global, because we've had everything else that JP's had, realistically. But the third boss rush comes along with Waka. Now, Waka does get used a lot in Boss Rush 3, but if I can avoid it, and I have Sin Clears that don't use him, partially because I'm just not that big a fan of Waka, he doesn't really do anything for me, but he has his status reels, and after the enemy has their turn, it's another trap-based one, but it's a random debuff. But all of them are good. Like, all of them are really strong. Like, one of them is increased bravery damage you take. One of them is can't go. They all increase bravery damage, sorry. One of them is paralysis. One of them is freeze. and the other one I think just lowers their stats. So they're all useful, but there's something about Waka's kit that I'm just not that big a fan of, so if I could avoid pulling for him, then I probably will. So now we're getting there. We are getting there, but at this point in time, there's actually a couple of banners missing from Ultima when it comes to Terra's block of banners, but we'll go over those anyway because I know which ones they are. Terra's really good. Her LD is absolutely fantastic. She finally gets the glow up that she deserves. And it's Chaos Wave of all things, which is really, really nice. She gives herself a buff that is kind of like a hybrid of Lightning and Varn, where she gets a buttload of free turns and a buttload of free skill uses. And her magic counter, the special effect magic, it doesn't go down. So you're just using the better versions of her meteor attacks and her meltdown. So you're just doing crazy amounts of damage. She gets her HP damage up on it, like while she's doing this as well. She gets 4 uses of it as well. Her burst is nice, like it's the same sort of thing with a lot of the damage dealing characters where it's just I deal more damage, my party deals more damage, etc. But it's not that mandatory. Like I really like her LD, but as far as bursts go, Terra's not the first one that I'm going to be going for. But the banners that come along with her, she actually comes along with Barsh and his LD boards, and Barsh gets a really nice addition to his LD where it does more damage. So it gives you an extra 4-hit AoE Brave HP. It also adds an increase in bravery damage to him through his Indomitable buff, and it also makes it last longer as well, and it also gives brave regen, kind of like Lena's at the start of his turn, which is really handy. The other banner that comes after Terra, like straight after Terra, is going to be a Miditelian and their Lost Chapter. But the thing, like, a Miditelian gets their LD call and their LD boards, and they're nice, but they're nothing like, oh my god, major. The other character that does come around with this, though, is Deuce LD. Now, Deuce weirdly doesn't get a rework here. However, her LD is pretty loaded up. It does a decent amount of damage. It gives you a special effect, which is Hymn of Healing. It doesn't consume an ability use. It does, like, it makes it so your buffs last longer. It makes it so that she gets a really strong HP plus variant. It makes her stronger. But honestly, this is probably another banner that I'm going to skip because I already have a Miditelian and I don't really feel the need to go for Deuce. And having looked at the Lufenia, I've seen plenty of clears that use Gladio, and Gladio is still being used at this point. Like, honestly, just pull for Gladio when he comes out. He's really just that good. Cloud, Lightning, Celes, loads of characters get used for this, so it's not one that I feel the need to go in on. Although I do think that Deuce is pretty good, so if you wanted to go in for Deuce, you probably could. And then the next character that comes out, or the new character that comes out alongside Terra, is Mog. Now, loads of people are going to want Mog because it's Mog. And of all the characters in my predictions for characters coming out, I did not think it was going to be Mog that came first. But here we are. Mog is kind of like a weird, like, addition, like hybrid of like Garnet and like auras and buffs. He's kind of a bit all over the place. Like, he's good. He does a lot of different things. Like, his EX is the most adorable thing I've ever seen in the world, which is the Rush of Moogles. And then, like, you get Brave Overflow, you get, like, just bravery damage up to your party, which is nice. It's all good stuff, but I don't think that Mog is a mandatory pull, which is why my personal preference is that if I have burst tokens again by this point, I'll probably just go for Terra and then nothing else after it. Because Chaos Challenges at this point are a walk in the park. You will pick up so many EXs while you're pulling for all of this stuff. Honestly, Chaos Challenges are going to be the least of your worries by this point. So don't worry about that. So if you don't have Barsh already, there's a great chance for you to pick up Barsh and possibly get Terra's Burst along the way. But this is actually a nice little part for me where I can skip banners. Like, I'm probably going to cave and end up pulling at least a little bit for Mog if I've got the resources to do so because he's just too adorable. But it's not one that I'm necessarily going to go in on, as much as I'd really like Terra. Now, from this point on, we start to enter the era where everything is all about follow-up attacks. Like, every character is getting follow-up attacks here. Now, the first character that comes out here is going to be Garland. So this is late May, so this is right over my birthday sort of time. So Garland is going to be coming out here with his burst, his LD board, and it's monstrous. Monstrous. Like, I'm very, very glad that 7 here continues to be the epitome of mediocrity, because I don't feel a need to have to pull for 7, because I didn't manage to get Garland's LD the first time around. So I'm going straight in for that LD on that banner. If I get the burst along the way, fantastic. But Garland's LD board basically makes it so that he triggers his Bind of Chaos attack twice, and his Chains of Time lasts longer, and he gets follow-up attacks every time he does it. His burst is also extremely powerful, because it basically, every time an ally takes a turn, his HP damage, his bravery damage limit, his brave overflow just goes up and up and up and up and up. And bear in mind, it gets reset every time an enemy takes a turn. But bear in mind that he has delay in his entire kit. Everything he does delays. So it's going to make it so that his damage output during his burst, he also is going to make it so that his EX is dealing an absolutely monstrous amount of damage. Like, his EX was always really good, but because of all of these extra buffs that he gets, it's now dealing like 700k a time. It's like, a really, I mean, I'm just plucking a number out of my head, but it's a really, really big number, and it's really, really good. 7's fine, I guess, but she's just getting, like, she gets follow-ups on her attacks. She does a brave HP twice. She does some splash damage. She gets a buff. She gets party buffs as well, and then she's the same as she's always been, really, where she's like concentrating on one enemy all the time. She does lower enemy speed using these new debuffs, but it's just nothing special. Now, if I'm going gems on any banner when it comes to Garland, it's gonna be this one here, which is Desh and Yang. Yang's LD, like, we've made jokes about Yang for the longest time, and it's actually hilarious how busted he gets after he gets his LD, because he gets another, like, massive amount of follow-ups on literally anything anyone does. So you know how Noctis works when he gets a follow-up attack after everyone after using his burst? Yang gets that, but it's AoE, and it's after enemies act as well, and it's on an LD, so he's going to be able to get it from like multiple things, and it's just really, really hilariously good. And I also don't have Desh. Like, I had to skip Desh, unfortunately, because I didn't have the resources, or I didn't have the resource I wanted to spend on him at the time. But his LD board comes about, and it's actually pretty solid as well, because it basically makes it so that the LD makes it so you take less HP damage, and you're dealing more damage with weakness damage. So that's actually a really nice thing as well. I really like Desh. I'd like to like use him a bit more and like get to learn a bit more about him. Ignis comes about, and he gets his LD, and it's like a fire enchant imperil deal, and it's actually not bad, but his is another one of those banners that has every EX on it and has the weird rates, and honestly I don't really want to go in on that. Like, I'm not going to pity Ignis, certainly not while Vivi exists. Like, we've got another fire imperiler, and if there's a like, obviously they function completely differently to each other, and I do think that while my main problem with Ignis is that his LD weapon is Ulrich's Kukris, which means that Nyx turning up is less likely, which makes me sad. But he basically gets a like, his enhances fire imperil, fire enchant, raises party attack. It's better, and it makes Ignis relevant again, but he's not a character that I'm particularly excited for. What I am excited for, however, is going to be Faris. Now, Faris's LD is really cheeky, because what it does is it combos perfectly with her EX, and I love using Faris. She's one of my favourite characters to use. But if you use Faris, after the enemies take their turn, their bravery gets set to 0, and then Sildra turns up and then does a bravery attack on them and then breaks them instantly. So it's like, it's perfect, and I just really love that. I think it's done really well. She's a really good dispel character. She's really fun to use. I'm looking forward to using Faris a great deal. So now we get to June. Now, June is where I will probably, like, it starts to get a bit murky, because this is really, really present in JP's era. Now, Golbez gets his LD in his burst, and he actually manipulates bravery like in a freeze type of way, similar to how Setzer does it and how Waka does it if he gets the right trigger, things like that. And he can lock down enemies while dealing a really large amount of damage, and a lot of people I know have pulled for Golbez. But from this point onwards, it does get very murky. And we're talking literally like 8-9 months in advance at this point. So what our resources are going to look like by this point, no one knows. Like, it's impossible to know exactly. All I know is that like Fujin gets her LD and it's decent, but it gets superseded by Bart's, and Bart's getting his LD and burst not long afterwards. Kadaj is a character that I'm going to find really, really hard to resist because he's Kadaj. He also introduces golden debuffs, which are debuffs that can't be dispelled or cleansed or anything like that by enemies, because cleansing on enemies in Lufenia becomes really, really prevalent, and something that, so like your Kefkas or your Emperors and stuff like that aren't going to be quite as effective by this point. But Kadaj brings this new like golden debuff that can't be cleansed, so there's that to bear in mind. But people have said that Kadaj is good, but he's not busted. And then we start, the only other character that I will talk about is going to be like the most recent banner that JP has had up until this point, which is Tifa. Tifa is one that everybody is talking about, and because her damage is just so big on her LD that it makes Kujas look bad. Like, but as I said at the beginning of the video, people who have said that they're not pulling for Kuja because they're going to wait for Tifa, it's like, you're going to be waiting a while. Like, have you seen how many banners that we've got over? So with regards to like Goldbear's and his banners, Bart's and all of his banners and stuff like that, I think the best thing to do is to kind of wait until nearer that time, and we'll have more foresight as to what's going to come about afterwards. Because for all we know, Tifa's busted right now. She's dealing ridiculous amounts of damage with her LD, like 500-700k with her LD or whatever it is. And then next week something more busted comes out. There's no way to tell quite that far in advance. So the purposes of this video is to try to bring us to plans on what we're going to pull for up until this point, and then see how we go from there. So let's go right back from the beginning, and then I'll do a quick fire thing to finish the video off as to where we're going to be from this point on. So you've seen now how many banners there actually are. So from Warrior of Light, it's going to be tickets for Warrior of Light's LD. Then I'm personally going to skip 8. Then tickets or gems for Kurosame. I'm not sure which yet. Probably tickets because I have a large number of them, and there's a summon board coming straight after. Depends on how Warrior of Light treats me. Tickets for Kuja's LD, skip Gal, gems on Gladio. God, gems on Gladio. Like, you saw how far in advance, like I've said that I've seen clears of like Terra's content where you can take Gladiolus, and it's absolutely hilarious how good he is. Lightning, it will be tickets for LD. And then, but at this point, I will judge whether my burst tokens go on either Lightning or Gladio. And then after that, it's going to be skip Camlanaut, sadly. Skip Reno if I can, although I wouldn't mind pulling for him because he is actually really good. Skip Sephiroth. Skip Kieran. Gems on Rude. Possibly, well, it depends on what my EX tokens looks like. If everything before this has been horrible to me, it might have to be tickets on Rude and hope that I get the LD before the EX. And then, depending on how Rude has treated me, is dependent on how I'm going to pull for Cloud. Probably tickets for LD. Then, again, probably tickets for Beatrix if I've still got tickets left. Otherwise, I might start having to dive into my gems at this point. Depends on how we are at this point. Like, tickets are going everywhere here. December is like the only time that you can really save, or that I can really feel the need to save. And then Xander, I will try and skip. Like, I think Xander is really, really good, but I reckon his LD boards are going to be coming soon. So I'm interested to see what's going to happen with that. Skip obviously all of these, we may not well get them. Tickets for Firian LD. Skip X-Death. Gems on Dark Knight Cecil, because I'm a fan of Dark Knight Cecil and I really want him, and if I can get Firian burst along the way, then fantastic. Then obviously skip all of these if we don't know if we're going to get them or not. If I can get, well, it depends. If I can get, if my tickets are still high, I mean, you've got to remember how many of those banners I said I want to spend tickets on. I will see how my resources look when it comes to Dark Knight Cecil, but I want Dark Knight Cecil LD. Depending on how that goes, it will be probably gems on Ramza. Like, Ramza is just really strong, and like getting those cool abilities on Machina and Ramza at the start is going to be really, really, really handy. Then it'll probably be tickets on either Caius or Guy, and I can't decide which one just yet. Probably Caius, because the call is better, because instant break on a call is a thing. Then it's like, this is where, like, February, so from Ramza it gets ugly. But to be fair, from Cloud it gets ugly for me. Then tickets for Penelo, tickets for Jack, tickets for Hope, tickets for Kryl, and by this point I probably have no tickets, so I'm going to have to spend gems on one of them. If I spend gems on one banner, In this block, it will probably end up being Hope, because I think that he has more of a future, because we know when his LD boards are coming. Or like, well, we know when he gets his, we know when he gets improvements and things like that. So I think that, I don't know. Like, this one is like, February, March is really horrible. Like, this one is all going to be, I don't know how it's going to be. If I get Ultimecia's burst, then I'll go back and I'll pull for her. It might even be Jack. Like, I actually really like Jack because his call is really good. He's actually really good. He gets used in loads of stuff. And I never got to use him the first time around, even though I had his EX, because I didn't have ingots at the time and I was an idiot. Onion Knight's banners, I have literally no idea. I do not know how I'm going to pull for Onion Knight. I'm probably just going to go for his LD and not his burst. With Ramza, if Ramza's LD is ugly to me, then I may hopefully have more burst tokens by the time he comes around, because that's 3 months from now, and I should hopefully have 50 again by then. If not, then we'll have to wait and see. Arciela and Theodore. Arciela will probably get my tickets, and Theodore I will probably skip, purely on the back of the fact that I'm pulling hard on Paladin Cecil straight after. It'll be tickets on Paladin Cecil's LD, and then either gems on either Kais or Gabranth, and then tickets for the other one. Like, this is going to be a hard month for me as well. I know I'm going to be pulling a lot on this. And then with Emperor, it'll be tickets for Sellers, and then gems on Aerith. Eldnash, I'll probably skip, but this depends entirely on what his banners with his burst look like. I don't know that right off the top of my head, and it probably comes out right after I've finished uploading this video, so it'll be difficult to know entirely. Aranea, I'll do tickets on because I think she's actually really cool. Ishtola, I will probably try and ticket the LD because I think it's really cool, and as a white mage main for FF14, I think I'd be remiss not to. Skip on Sarah, gems on Trey because I think he's that damn good, and if I get Ishtola burst along the way, fantastic. Skip Waka if I can. If I'm struggling with the boss rush, then I might try and pull for him. And then tickets on Terra LD, and then obviously I already have Barsh. If you don't have Barsh, I'd honestly go with go and try and pull Barsh before I try and pull Terra. Tickets on, actually it might even be gems. It may well be, no, it'll be tickets on Garland LD, and then gems on Yang and Desh after him. Skip Ignis, tickets on Faris, and then from that point, I honestly don't know. So as you can see, going through my notes, the number of skippable banners there are, mostly are in December. So it's 8, Gao, Karanorth, Reno, Sephiroth, Kieran, Exdeath, Caius, or Guy, so that's 8. Theodore or Arciela, so that's 9. Then Eldnash is 10. Ishtola, sorry, not Ishtola, Sarah is 11. Waka is 12. Deuce is 13. Mog, I will probably skip, purely because it's well known that you can use Yuffie on Mog, because Mog is like a cleanser, as well as the fact that he does the water and thunder resist down, he does all the healing, he does all of that. He's also got a cleanse in his kit, so you can bring along Yuffie and cheese it, and I have Yuffie EX, so I can do it that way. So that skips the 13, and then Ignis I'll be skipping is 14, and so that's 14 banners in 8 months that I think are skippable for me. I will not lie to you guys. I have 500,000 gems and 800 tickets, and I'm scared for my resources at this point. So honestly, this is my pulling plan, because I think that other people's are going to look entirely different, and I think that people's luck and people's available resources are going to be very different from mine. So therefore, I think that if there were any characters that were absolutely must-haves from this point onwards, I would say Gladio, Kurasame, Lightning, Cloud, Rude, let's keep going here. I want to say Dark Knight Cecil, but I'm not sure it is Dark Knight Cecil. Ramza, Cecil, so that's 7. Aerith, or Sellers, one or the other, so that's 8. Trey, Garland. Yeah, so there are 9 must-have characters. Some of them have bursts, most of them actually don't. And don't be too afraid of not getting bursts. There are going to be times, like I only have 3 out of the available 6 right now. And I've pitied on every one I've had. And I've still cleared every single piece of channel content there has been so far. Lufenia is coming, yes. Lufenia is scary, yes. But as time progresses, just like Chaos, just like Cosmos, just like EX even, it will get easier over time. Oh, so that's the end of Future Pools 3. It's a long one. It's a long one because it's so difficult to make choices between a lot of these banners. But let me know in the comments below what you think of my pulling plans, whether you think I'm a complete idiot, whether you think I'm really, really optimistic about the number of resources I'm going to have for all of these banners, and of course let me know what you guys think your pulling plans are going to look like. And obviously don't forget to like the video, share it out to anyone who plays Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia, because if nothing else, I'm hoping to inform everybody about what exactly is coming and when, because obviously we were able to break it up into months and stuff like that. I haven't even touched on the fact that we're probably going to get global exclusives at some point, most likely February, because that's when the anniversary is, and that's going to make that month even more difficult. So let's just not forget that that's also a thing to factor in. And of course, don't forget to click on that bell for notifications on any future videos I might be making. So thank you all very much for coming, and I hope that this has been helpful to you. See you guys in the next video. Take care.